The fluid motion of perfectly synchronized aerial ballet, a trademark of the RAAF's aerobatic team for nearly 15 years. In that time, the Roulettes have thrilled big crowds throughout Australia and once overseas with routines of loops, barrel rolls, crossovers and cascades in their Mackie aircraft. Each maneuver is designed for maximum pilot safety and practiced constantly. But, as in all types of flying, the unforeseen can happen. 15 months ago, 2 pilots died during a flight over their home base at East Sale in Victoria's Gippsland. Weekend magazine reporter Richard Hunn has been looking at the Roulette since that tragedy and what it takes to train a team to perfection.
We'll taxi out, line up as a Vic, we'll launch, 15-second stream takeoff, smoke on, 50 knots.
Squadron leader Leroy Gordon, 15 years with the Air Force in helicopters, Mirage fighters and Mackies. 3 years with the Roulettes, the last 2 as Roulette 1, the team leader.
And it will accelerate from 150 knots to 250 knots.
Roulette 2, Ian Taylor, 14 years in the Air Force. Number 3 is Steve Bahari, aged 26. Roulette 4, Mike O'Loughlin, an instructor for 5 years. And Roulette 5, Bruce Davidson, with nearly 4,000 hours flying time.
The venue, overhead RAAF base East Sale. Now, as far as the crowd line, my positioning is concerned, it'll be identical to our previous practice displays overhead the base. An individual's honesty and integrity needs to be beyond question. Trust and integrity, loyalty, those things are very important.
Despite their name, nothing is left to chance. Every display routine is carefully worked out, each practice run thoroughly briefed.
This type of flying is potentially dangerous, and we are all very well aware of the potential dangers concerned with doing this style of flying, and being aware of such dangers keeps us safe. Aggressiveness is important. Near enough's not good enough, so give it your best shot. However, if anyone is unfortunate to experience a problem during our display this afternoon, remember your priorities. If someone should experience a major emergency, a bug out must be on.
Membership of the Roulettes changes constantly. Pilots rotate with Air Force postings, and each team leader tries to enhance the display's visual impact. With every proposed formation change, 2 questions are asked. Is it possible? And is it safe?
Big change over the top, and then turning left to reposition for the next manoeuvre, the Vic barrel roll. Up. The display is designed to be entertaining for a crowd line, a line of people on the ground. So we set about designing a 5-aircraft display which will highlight the aircraft's performance. It's also very important for me, as the team leader, to position each of my formation manoeuvres so that I don't overfly the crowd, so that I don't go out of sight of the crowd. I would describe it as a graceful progression through the sky, and we work on the gracefulness as far as our formation changes are concerned. Things need to look under control and smooth. During the routine though, we split up the formation and we inject some dynamics.
The end of a good year for the 84 team. At Christmas, all except Roulette 3 were posted to other units. The new team had just a few weeks of constant training to become a cohesive unit. To fly low at display height, they needed approval from the base commanding officer, Wing Commander Terry Boddy.
Today we'll be flying down to 500 feet AGL display height. As you know, we've gone through a series of checks at 4,000 feet where you've been flying the aerobatic sequence, down to 2,000 feet above the ground and down to 1,000. Today is the final hurdle, down to display height.
1,000 to 500 mightn't seem a terribly big step down, but I can assure you it is the most significant step down of all those that we've done so far.
For squadron leader John Simmons, the new team leader, it's second time around.
Thinking back to when I went through this stage a few years ago, the ground can be quite distracting and it tends to roughen up the formation somewhat. So you will find that, and you'll find the drop down in height a fairly significant event as far as flying the sequence goes.
For the next 17 minutes, the 5 pilots must give their best through the variety of tight formations 3 meters apart and subjected to 4 times the force of gravity. Still tense, but with growing confidence in each other's ability, it's now time to pinpoint the small errors in the closely choreographed routine.
It appears that I'm sitting a little bit too low here. I think I'll have to move up a little bit higher, perhaps about 3 feet higher in plane in the formation, which will alleviate the problem of the apparent lag. The hardest thing is looking sideways at the leader. It's like trying to drive a car down a highway looking out the driver's side window. I've just changed into card 5. I'm moving back to fly off number 1 and 3 and to remain in line astern with 2. And again, it appears that I'm sitting a little bit too low, so I'll have to step up a couple of feet, 2 or 3 feet higher, and that should solve the problem there.
Pulling down now for thread the needle. The setup is going fairly well, although there's a little bit of movement of left to right from the foreship relative to me. nice conservative thread the needle, and the guys seem to have split fairly evenly from what I can tell. And then up for my hammerhead. I slide backwards of at least 2 to 3 aircraft lengths. There's a fair bit of snatching on the controls, so it was going backwards reasonably. And it fell through quite nicely, and the nose pitched through the vertical and back up towards the other horizon, so I think the smoke would look quite impressive, have the desired effect for the crowd. Towards the end of the show, where I spend most of my time down the back and step down 3 deep behind 2 rows of the other guys, I try and not get distracted by any movement that there might be from the other fellows and fly off the leader, particularly for angle of bank and pitch inputs, though of course I'm aware of the other aircraft and still make sure that we don't get too close. Some guys tend to trim the aircraft, the flight controls, to relieve the load during the manoeuvres, and other guys like to leave it alone and just hold the stick forces in their hands. That gets a little bit more tiring, but then they always know that the trim is in the one position.
It tends to be a little disconcerting sometimes to be flying off an aircraft at a distance away and another aircraft in between, waffling up and down.
A few weeks of intensive daily practice had paid off. The skill needed for various types of military flying, that's the same skill that had qualified them all as flying instructors, now brought them official approval to run the display at minimum height. From here on, each practice would be videotaped, each pilot made to analyse his every movement. In 2 weeks, they had to be perfect.
Well, how did it go?
Oh, a little bit rougher down low, a bit of turbulence down there, but reasonable overall, yeah.
Any sort of pressure on you? I mean, did you feel nervous at all?
Oh, initially, but once we got into the routine, settled down and got right into it.
How did it go at 500 feet for you, mate?
A lot bumpier, and fairly hot, fairly tired, and very thirsty.
The Roulettes will always remember the mid-air explosion that killed Flight Lieutenant Steve Carter and Graham Brooks. But they don't think about it in the air. That's a distraction they simply can't afford.
It's a tragedy that this unit won't forget. I won't forget. But I think the spirit lives on.
can't see through them, which makes looking down at the ground when we're up in the air extremely difficult. We can't see the ground, so we can't find our way around. It makes it hard to go up and down and get to the ground. To help us fly around inside the cloud, the engineers have come up with these flight instruments which help us orientate ourselves with reference to the Earth. They've also come up with some other instruments that they provide us with in the cockpit to help us navigate. What are some of these instruments? What are they called?
Navigation instruments.
Navigation instruments, that's correct. What are some of these navigators, as we call them, that we use to navigate around the countryside? What are the available? Looks?
Fuel or shift indicator.
Okay, that's something specific to RAAF. What I'm talking about is what aids do the DOA people specifically set up around the countryside to enable us to navigate around Australia without reference to the ground. Indeed. Can you name another aid, Jeff?
DME.
DME. Another one? Hunter? Again? We'll go for another one. Jeff. Can you name another aid for me?
Me.
Jeff. Oh, sorry. Jim. VI. Okay, as we've covered in our previous flying, we can orientate ourselves with reference to these navigation aids in the aircraft. We can tell where we are, reference the aid. We can track to and from the aid. Okay. By using these aids, we can track from one point in the country to another. However, if we get to the other end and the weather's still bad, we can either hang around till we run out of fuel and crash, or we can attempt somehow to land. What else can we use these navigation aids for in attempting to get onto the ground?
Instrument approach.
That's right, we can do an instrument approach. The one we're specifically going to look at today is the NDB approach and its associated holding pattern. The NDB approach itself provides us pilots, aviators, with a safe, ordered and standard method of descending our aircraft from cruising altitude to an altitude from which we can do a low-level circuit. Now, why would you think we could only go down to a level where we could do a low-level circuit by using the NDB? Bullets.
The errors on the of the nav aid don't permit accurate straight in home.
Okay, it's all to do with the accuracy of the system as a whole, and the rules and regulations governing the use of this particular nav aid in approaching an airfield. Okay, the ordered and standard method that we use is found in the instrument approach plates. The instrument approach plate itself combines the techniques we've already learned how to do in climbing and descending, turning our aircraft, and also orientating ourselves with reference to the NDB. Now the approach criteria, which govern the format of the approach plate, are all covered in the front section of the approach plate. Goes through all the regulations explains all the terms. So I won't be going through that in this brief. However, if you don't understand any of the explanations given in there, just go and talk to your instructor. Okay. The objective of this brief is to explain the techniques and procedures required to fly an NDB approach and holding pattern. The way I'll go about this is first I'll explain the holding pattern, how we enter it and how we actually perform the holding pattern, and then I'll go on to explaining how we carry out the NDB approach. So by the end of the lesson we'll be able to go out, get in our aeroplanes, fly around in IMC, as we've already learned to do, and be able to track back to the NDB and carry out an approach through IMC until we hit the ground. Okay, reference material for this brief are the instrument approach plates and the mass briefing guide, which you should all have read. Are there any questions? Ben.
Did you feel comfortable? What's the best fun you can have without laughing?
Pretty.
Wrong? Basic aerobatics. So apologise for the little scrub out the slide there. I know how that occurred. Okay, now basic aerobatics. Aerobatic manoeuvres, I should say, play a major part in flying training. And the purpose of these manoeuvres, what are the purpose of these manoeuvres?
Practice flying the aircraft near its max performance.
Yeah. Some of these are not quite so obvious. Right, so I'll give you a little hand with them. Anybody think of another one? How about you, Bernard?
Check out your coordination skills. Actually flying.
So it improves your flying ability. Okay. Alright. So we'll just go to the first one, which is develops confidence, judgment and durability, right, to fly. Okay. Anything else? How about accustom you to the highest strain you might face in combat? It seems a little bit sort of gung-ho, I suppose, to you, but as you've all probably suffered under the instructors doing their aerobatics and that for you on the way home from some of your normal sequences that you've already done, you'll have faced this up until now. It's a different thing to actually have to do it, and you'll get used to that as you go into the aerobatic phase of the flying. Okay, an important one now, the aeros form the basis for a lot of tactical manoeuvres, particularly with fighter and bomber aircraft in escape and evasion. Okay, so you'll need to know those sorts of things when you get out into the squadrons. Okay, and the second last one, only for those who aspire to being test pilots and that later on in their career, means of assessing the aircraft control qualities, okay, and the differences between different airplanes. And finally, it's a lot of fun. Okay. Like everything that's a lot of fun, there are stringent rules and regulations governing the amount of fun you can have, and these are covered in DI Ops, Defence Instruction, Ops, and Flying Order Book, and also Flight Manual. Now, the Flying Order Book will detail the rules and regulations pertaining to point-cook procedures, and the Flight Manual, of course, the aircraft limits, which you should already know. Okay, so the aim then of this mess brief is to detail the procedures and techniques used in performing basic aerobatics in the CD4. Okay, and at the end of this brief, you should be able to go through in your own mind, okay, the procedures used for the 4 basic manoeuvres we're going to do. First one is unusual attitudes, and you might say, well, why do we need to go through the procedures for unusual attitudes? What do you think would be needed, Jim?
To recover.
To recover from what?
UA.
To recover from the UA as a cause of?
Incorrect control inputs.
Incorrect control inputs. And in fact, the unusual attitude can be quite a frightening experience if you haven't done it before. You make a control input, the aircraft does something completely different. Once we've mastered those, the instructor will show you the techniques as you develop into the aerobatic sequences of flying. You'll then be taught the basic loop, okay, and we'll go through that further down in the mass brief, and all the trials and tribulations can come out of the loop. Inverted flight, okay, getting used to inverted flight is very important, and we'll cover some of the problems of that as well. And lastly, the slow roll, and that will really test your coordination as it does mine. Okay, so is everybody clear on the aims? All right. The mass brief will proceed on naturally from there. Anybody got any questions up until now? That's all.